Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not...
The applause fades, the lights burn hot, and then someone finally says what others only whisper. Bill Maher stepping into the storm and slicing through the DNC's carefully crafted momentum narrative. He isn't attacking a party label. His challenging behavior he sees as reckless governance dressed up as progress. According to recent voting trends and urban polling data, confidence in major city leadership has been softening, especially among independents who once leaned left but now feel economically squeezed. Maher frames it as real versus performance, substance versus slogan, a truth teller confronting a system more invested in optics than outcomes. The deeper tension isn't ideology, it's trust. When voters sense a gap between promises and lived reality, that gap becomes political oxygen for backlash. And if that erosion continues, the party may discover that momentum is easier to manufacture than to sustain.
Finally, new rule, if you're still looking for a New Year's resolution, here's one. Get out of your media bubble. The most frustrating thing that happens to me whenever I'm off is people I run into want me to do my job, which I'm on vacation from, privately in restaurants and at parties, and, well, the bathhouse is a separate situation. But look, I'm happy to share my opinions wherever, except for this. Everybody, left and right, is only half informed.
When sweeping tax hikes and aggressive immigration positioning were unveiled, Maher didn't just critique the policies, he questioned the strategy behind them. In his telling, it's not a moral crusade. It's a power play that risks alienating the very middle that decides elections. Based on exit polls and demographic shifts in recent cycles, suburban and working-class voters consistently rank affordability and public safety above ideological alignment. Calmly and surgically, the data shows that when economic anxiety rises, tolerance for experimentation drops. Maher casts himself as the adult in the room, warning that bold rhetoric without pragmatic groundwork feels manufactured, not authentic. The emotional undercurrent is fear of drift, of leaders mistaking applause in activist circles for broad public consent. If that miscalculation hardens, the backlash won't be loud at first. It will be silent, and it will show up on election day.
Now, let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver, and if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property...
Seize private property. 3 words that detonated like a flashbang in the political arena. Maher didn't hear nuance, he heard escalation. He framed it as a moment when theory escaped the seminar room and marched into City Hall. Data from recent election cycles shows that property rights remain a deeply bipartisan sensitivity, especially among immigrant and minority homeowners who see ownership as security, not oppression. A fair counterpoint exists. Some argue such rhetoric is symbolic, aimed at curbing corporate abuse rather than targeting individuals. But politics runs on perception, not footnotes. When language sounds radical, voters don't parse intent, they react to risk. Maher's warning is less about ideology and more about credibility. Once leadership appears comfortable with extreme phrasing, moderates recalibrate their trust. And trust, once fractured, is hard to reclaim.
Property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? I mean, these are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism...
When a claim equating home ownership with systemic supremacy surfaced, Maher's frustration wasn't theatrical, it was analytical. He argued that complex academic critiques were being flattened into viral slogans, stripped of context and deployed as moral weapons. According to housing data and long-term wealth studies, ownership remains one of the primary vehicles for upward mobility across racial groups. There is an academic debate about structural barriers in housing markets, that's real. But collapsing that debate into absolutes, Maher suggests, turns scholarship into performance. This is the fault line between authentic inquiry and manufactured outrage. Calmly put, when arguments ignore evidence, they lose persuasive power outside their ideological base. And voters, especially those juggling mortgages and rent hikes, don't experience housing as theory, they experience it as pressure.
In support of abolishing ICE, and I'll tell you why. Because what we see is an entity that has no interest in fulfilling its stated reason to exist. We're seeing a government agency that is supposed to be enforcing some kind of immigration law, but instead what it's doing is terrorizing people no matter their immigration status, no matter the facts of the law, no matter the facts of the case. And I'm tired of waking up every day and seeing a new image of someone being dragged out of a car, dragged out of their home, dragged out of their life. What we need to...
ICE becomes the symbol, the lightning rod, the villain in a narrative machine that thrives on outrage. Maher's critique isn't that enforcement agencies are flawless. Far from it. It's that distortion erodes serious policy debate. Based on court records and subsequent reporting, several high-profile claims in recent years were later revised or contextualized, but the corrections never traveled as far as the initial fury. That asymmetry fuels distrust. A rational counterpoint. Enforcement agencies have documented cases of misconduct that deserve scrutiny. But when every action is framed as proof of systemic evil, nuance evaporates. Politics shifts from fact-finding to emotional theater. And once debate becomes performance, real reform becomes nearly impossible.
Seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a...
Maher's sharpest arrow isn't aimed at radicals. It's aimed at the silence of moderates. In his narrative, power doesn't consolidate through loud extremes alone. It consolidates when responsible voices choose comfort over confrontation. Data from primary elections suggests that activist energy often outweighs moderate turnout, reshaping party platforms from the inside. That's not conspiracy, it's math. The counter-argument is that coalition politics requires compromise and message discipline. But discipline without internal debate becomes stagnation. Maher's deeper warning is psychological. When voters sense that authenticity has been replaced by choreography, they disengage. And disengagement is the prelude to defeat.
This is the pendulum never lands in the middle problem I'm always bitching about. Really, the choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism, either a side deal for the Trump family every time he does business overseas, or the lady who says, impoverish the white middle class. Oh yeah, there's a great campaign slogan for you. Honestly, as New York mayoral races go, I was less creeped out by Anthony.
There's a note of disbelief in MR's tone, an admission that he misread the trajectory. He assumed electoral setbacks would trigger recalibration toward the center. Instead, he sees doubling down. According to post-election analyses and demographic breakdowns, cultural flashpoints often mobilize the base but repel swing voters critical in battleground states. Calmly assessed, parties oscillate. They test boundaries and adjust. But emotionally, for voters watching from the outside, it feels like drift without anchor. MR frames it as ideological amnesia, lessons unlearned, warnings dismissed. If that perception spreads, the consequence isn't just policy loss, it's narrative collapse.
Are programs for every single New Yorker. These are not programs that are going to ask the immigration status of any one of the children. All of those children are New Yorkers. They should all be enrolled in pre-K and 3K, no matter where they were born or where they come from. And we are also proud to be a sanctuary city. What a sanctuary city means is that we have policies in place, policies that have existed for years in this city, that deny ICE agents access into schools, hospitals, city properties, or even the properties of city contractors, unless those ICE agents can present a judicial warrant signed by.
Immigration expansion paired with strained city services is where compassion meets capacity. Supporters call broad benefits humane. Critics call them unsustainable. According to municipal budget reports and shelter capacity data, New York already faces structural pressure in housing and healthcare. A fair counterpoint. Inclusive policies can integrate newcomers into the tax base over time, strengthening the economy. But integration requires infrastructure, and infrastructure requires planning. MR's argument is rooted in sequencing, expand responsibly or risk overload. When leaders blur that distinction, voters don't debate theory. They notice crowded shelters and rising costs. And perception of disorder can reshape a city's political future faster than any speech.
Dead of winter, another snowstorm is coming, and homeless encampments are still a critical problem in Mayor Mamdani's New York. So how is the mayor going to deal with it? Political reporter Marcia Kramer took her questions to Mamdani in this story that you will see here only on CBS News New York.
They are an eyesore. CBS News New York discovering homeless encampments, 2 on the Upper West Side, 2 in Hell's Kitchen, with many wondering how the new mayor will deal with the twin problems of finding a humane solution and optics that make it look like the city is out of control. This man, afraid to show his face, says he's called 311 repeatedly about the 2 encampments on West 45th Street.
They take the call like they're supposed to, but nothing's really happening.
How do you feel about the fact that nothing's happening?
Well, I don't feel good about it because I've been in this neighborhood.
Homelessness isn't a statistic. It's a daily visual referendum on governance. Encampments expanding, shelters overflowing, businesses relocating. Media reports confirm rising numbers and ballooning expenditures in multiple major cities. The comparison to California isn't ideological, it's cautionary. Billions spent with limited visible improvement have hardened skepticism nationwide. Calmly, the data suggests the crisis is driven by a complex mix of housing supply constraints, mental health gaps, and addiction. But politically, complexity loses to optics. When streets appear unstable, confidence declines. And confidence, once lost, can hollow out even the strongest urban economies.
I wondered if you could indulge me for a second. So I took the problem to the mayor himself, showing him video of people camped on the street in such frigid weather. What is your office going to do about it, and is it acceptable, given the fact that it's 21 degrees, for these people to be there on the street, on the Upper West Side, and getting no help?
It is not acceptable for a New Yorker to have to find shelter outside, whether on the Upper West Side or anywhere in this city. New Yorkers should be able to find a place to call their home. And what I have said consistently, first as a candidate and now as the mayor, is that outcomes are how we judge.
A voluntary approach to clearing encampments sounds compassionate, and in principle it respects autonomy. Yet evidence from California's recent initiatives shows that without enforcement mechanisms, participation rates remained inconsistent and visible street homelessness persisted despite heavy spending. That's not cruelty versus kindness, it's outcomes versus intentions. Maher's skepticism is strategic. Policies must be judged by results, not rhetoric. When billions are allocated and sidewalks look unchanged, taxpayers question competence. The danger isn't empathy, it's inertia disguised as virtue. And if New York repeats models without measurable benchmarks, the political cost could eclipse the fiscal one.
Still looking for a New Year's resolution? Here's one. Get out of your media bubble. The most frustrating thing that happens to me whenever I'm off is people I run into want me to do my job, which I'm on vacation from, privately in restaurants and at parties, and, well, the bathhouse is a separate situation. But look, I'm happy to share my opinions wherever, except for this. Everybody, left and right, is only half.
Maher's final plea cuts across party lines. Leave the bubble. Algorithms reward outrage. They do not reward understanding. Studies on media consumption patterns show increasing ideological sorting, with audiences clustering around affirming narratives. That isolation breeds confidence without comprehension. A healthy democracy, he argues, demands friction, real debate, uncomfortable questions, evidence tested against opposing views. This isn't left versus right. It's authentic discourse versus curated performance. When loyalty replaces curiosity, truth becomes negotiable. And the future of any party, any movement, depends on whether it chooses echo or examination. The real question is simple. Are we listening to win arguments or to understand reality?